All right, guys, today we got a 2003 Ram pickup. It's got a pretty unusual starting issue. We're kind of already into it, but we thought we would go ahead and do a quick video on it to show you a pitfall that you might run into when testing something like this. So let's get into it. So we're already into this thing. I want to show you what it's doing though. First, if you put the key in the ignition, everything's good. You turn it one click, you get really nothing. Your one click, your miles come up and your Prindle indicators come up. But if you go to what we would call the run position, not the crank position, the run position, I'm just going to click it one time. There it is. So the engine starts and runs. Now if you watch the key, if I go all the way to the crank position, nothing, right? So that's where the car should crank right there. That's where the engine should crank right there. So again, we'll do it again. If I just go to the run position, car starts, starter disengages, engine runs, right? So kind of a weird problem, but the down where a lot of people would fall into a pitfall here, a couple places. One would be, why does the starter disengage? So people would be like, okay, well, you know, usually if something like that happens, the starter would sit there and run. If we had a bad ignition switch or a relay sticking or something like that, we'd have the starter just sitting there running. But let's go over. I want to show you the wiring diagram on it real quick. I want to show you why the starter disengages, and then we're going to come back over and show you where you can get caught up in this thing and go down a rabbit hole. We don't want to do that. So let's go over to the wiring diagram real quick, and then we'll go over that. So we got the wiring diagram pulled up. All I pulled up was the starter, just a starting system wiring diagram. I just went into all data, went to starting and charging, and then went to the OE wiring diagram. If we come over to the wiring diagram, we're going to see the ignition switch. I'm going to see one wire coming out of it. Now you see the ignition switch has got different positions. So position 0 is off, and then position 2 is run, position 1 is start. So, and then we've got our accessories on the other side. So if we look at it, this yellow wire coming out of the ignition switch goes down, and it's going to feed our starter motor relay, right? So it's going to come in, it's going to put power to our starter motor relay, and then our PCM, our engine control module, is going to put ground to the starter motor relay. Once the relay engages, we're going to send it out to a fuse, and we're going to go down to the, oops, sorry. We got power coming in here. We're going to go down to the starter itself, and we're going to engage the starter. So why doesn't the starter stay running when we have power to the relay? Well, because the engine control module is providing the ground to the relay. So when we've got the key off, we have no power, no ground to this relay at all. We turn the key to the crank position, or the start position. We supply power, PCM supplies ground, and it engages the starter. So now, once the engine control module sees that the engine's running, once it gets an RPM signal and it sees it above a certain amount, it's going to disengage this relay because it doesn't want the starter to sit there and run. So those of you that are, have run into this before on older cars that just had a regular old ignition switch that when you went to crank, it would send actual power out to the exciter wire on the solenoid or whatever it may be. You remember that when that thing did, we had cars that would do this sometimes, and you would turn it that on position, and that starter would just sit there and run and run and run. The engine would start up and run, and that starter would stay engaged. It would make a heck of a sound. It would eat the starter up. It would eat the flywheel up, and then you're into costly repairs, plus having to find out, was it the ignition switch or something else going on there that caused the problem to begin with. So in this case, the engine control module is protecting that from happening, which is why that starter is disengaging. So first thing would be, don't go down the rabbit hole because the starter disengages, and not think, and just think something wild like, well, maybe it's not the ignition switch or something like that. Let's keep it basic. Right now, what I feel like, and what we've already tested and I'll show you, is that yellow wire coming out of that ignition switch, which should only be hot in the start position, is actually hot in the run position. So we're going to show you that, but I'm going to show you, don't click off because you think you know the issue because it's the ignition switch. Let me show you where the pitfall is on testing this. So let's go back over there and we'll do that. So here's what we got. Got the key out of the ignition. We got Tink over here helping. Got the key out of the ignition. Let's go. I've got the, if we come in here, you can see I've got the piercing probe on the yellow wire. So only yellow wire coming out of the ignition switch. Okay. I just had to take the clamshells off of this to get access to it. So we've got two tools here. And this would hold true no matter what I used. I could probably use a meter, you could use a scope, and you're going to get the same result as you're going to get with this. So let me show you where you can go down a rabbit hole. If I go over here right now and I put the power probe to that wire, that's the yellow wire. We got 8 volts on it. And a lot of guys would be like, okay, well, I have voltage coming out of that right now, out of that ignition switch right now. And I don't even have the key in the ignition. So one would be, why isn't the starter engaging? Well, you know, you would think, well, the engine control module's not letting it engage. You know, I've got voltage coming out of here. What's going on? Why do I have 8 volts? Okay. And you could potentially go down a rabbit hole. Now you might still say, well, it's the ignition switch sending out the 8 volts. It's not the ignition switch that's giving the 8 volts to that. So if we take the test light and we put it in here, we get nothing. So that ignition switch is not sending the 8 volts. What's giving the 8 volts, I believe, is the engine control module is sending a very low amperage 8 volt signal through that circuit to test that starter relay circuit to be sure that it is intact, and it could potentially set a code if it wasn't intact. So we can prove that out though. So first thing we're going to do is let's verify that we are going to get power on this yellow wire when this thing's in the run position, not in the start position. So I'm going to take the key, just put it in the ignition. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the power probe. I'm going to put it on. Okay, and I'm going to reach over and I'm just going to put it in the run position. I'm not going to crank or in the start. I'm just going to run. And there's our voltage. And we have voltage all the time coming out of that. So right now we've got voltage coming out of that, even though the engine's sitting there running. So we shouldn't have voltage coming out of that, obviously. So now let's do the test light, do the same exact thing. So the key's off. We've got nothing. I'm going to just go to the run position. We've got power, and we always have power. So the ignition switch is bad internally, and it's sending power out all the time, which is why this thing is on that yellow wire, which should only have power when it's in the start position. So we know now that the ignition switch is the problem. Let's see if we can't prove out that it's not the ignition switch sending the 8 volts, because that was the pitfall that I was getting to, was we don't want to sit there and worry about that 8 volts. I really think that that's just a low amperage circuit check. So from the PCM. So all we've got to do to test it is get the ignition switch, get the connector off of it, and test this out and see if on that same wire with the ignition switch disconnected, if we still have the 8 volts, then we know that's coming from the other side, not coming from the ignition switch. So I've already got a new ignition switch here. I'm not going to put that in yet. I'm going to take this one out, and then we're going to check that wire again. I'm going to leave this hooked up. We're going to test that wire again. So give me 1 second. We'll get the ignition switch out, and then we'll come right back. So we got the old ignition switch out. Got the new one ready. We're not putting it in yet. Let's look at that circuit. Let's see if we still have the 8 volts on it. So right now the key's out. Obviously there's no ignition switch in it, so it wouldn't matter. Come over. Still got this in the yellow wire, which is our wire to our starter relay. And we'll go to our test light. We've got nothing. Let's see what we got here. And here we've got 6.9 volts, 7 volts. I probably have moved that around a little bit. Won't have a good connection, but we still have voltage on that circuit. So, you know, why do we have voltage on it? Clearly we have voltage on it because it's a circuit test from the engine control module. So I just don't want you guys to get caught up in that and go, oh, I got a shorted wire, I got to go chase that wire down. Why do I have voltage on it? That's the kind of stuff where if you look up theory and operation, sometimes you'll find it in that, or just know that the engine control module, it tends to put something out on a lot of circuits just to test them to be sure the circuit has got good integrity, so it can either flag codes or not turn things on if it doesn't think the circuit's going to work. So don't get caught up in that. So let's get the new ignition switch in it, and then let's see if this thing's fixed. Let's see if everything's good. And I'm gonna see if I can't pop that old one apart and see if we can't find out what's wrong inside that. But maybe we can, maybe we can't. But let's get the new one in it first. Well, you guys always say, hey, we appreciate you guys showing your mistakes. Well, here we are. This thing has definitely gone south on us real quick. Put the new ignition switch in, it does exactly the same thing as the old one did. So I went to pull the wire out a little bit here, and this panel actually popped down, so I'm able to get to the wiring now. We can see there's a lot of extra stuff added here, and I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around this. What could it be? The only thing I can think is maybe the wire that gets power to it with the, and I'm pointing at that wire, I don't know that it's that wire yet. Whatever wire gets power to it when the key is in the run position, if somehow that wire is crossed to the yellow wire, then I guess it would get power with the key is just in the on position. If somehow that wire got crossed to it, I mean, I don't know how that could happen unless somebody did something, but let's go pull. I'm going to pull the wiring diagram up for the whole ignition switch. We're going to find out which wires get power to it with the key just in the on position. We're going to come back and we're going to put power on those wires and see if we get power to the yellow. So, because I want to make sure that we don't have a bad ignition switch. I mean, again, we don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Maybe we got a bad part. I don't know. I'm not a big proponent of just keeping throwing stuff at it. I mean, I've already made one mistake maybe here, so let me not make another. So let me get a wiring diagram on the whole ignition switch wiring, and then we're going to look at that. We'll come back. We'll test it out. Okay, we're back. It's several hours later. This always happens on a Thursday, which is our Friday. We got the problem fixed. I'm going to show you what we did. So if we go back over here, we remember that this ignition switch shows that at position 1, which is start, we should get power on that yellow wire, right? Okay. So now let's go over to this wiring diagram, which shows the same exact thing. There's a yellow wire, shows it hot and start, okay? We go over to the connector view of the ignition switch. Here's the yellow wire. Fuse ignition switch output in run and start. Okay, so now the water is really muddied. So we're like, okay, is it supposed to have power on it when it's in run? And how would that work? How would the engine control module, you know, control this? And I'm sorry guys, this is gonna be a little convoluted because I've literally been doing this for a few hours and had a few other cars that I've been doing, so, but I'll get you to it. So I came over here and found I was having a really tough time finding a wiring diagram for the actual ignition switch itself. So I came over to MotoLogic and I found this wiring diagram, which was really helpful. And what I did was I just went through each one of these wires that are coming out, going in and coming out, and I printed out the pinout, and then I went through and I said, okay, what do I actually need that's going to get the engine control module power and power going out basically to things that I know we need to run. So a lot of these were like, you know, power windows, IPDM that then went out to different components that had nothing to do with it running. See if I can't. A lot of different things like your door locks, an instrument cluster, impact, your airbags, things like that. So basically I just wanted to know what would I have to have. Went through this wiring diagram, which I'm gonna tell you right now. Look at this mess down here with on that yellow wire, and I'm sorry, there was a yellow wire. This has been a day, guys. I'm sorry, but this boils down to, if you look at this whole thing, it boils down to basically the relay control coming out of the PCM. So what I ended up doing, let's go over to the car. I'm gonna show you what I ended up doing. I'm gonna show you what we end up finding. Still got the ignition switch out. This is the old one. Did not put the new one in it. Don't need the new one. I had a scanner hooked up to it. Matter of fact, let me get a scanner. Hold on one second and I'll be right back. Crazy day. Okay, so let me show you what I did. I took the ignition switch out. I took the wires that I knew were going to be important to get this thing to run. And so I've got the main power coming in, and then I've got the red and white and the blue. And these are the ones I determined that were going to the engine control module. So that would be red and white is fused output to the PCM, ignition run and start, and then the fused output in the run and start IPDM, and in that IPDM would include the PCM. So I wanted that one also. I wanted anything that went to the PCM because I wanted to know if it was trying to turn that relay on. And then I have the yellow wire that we know is supposed to be the starter relay to send power to the starter relay, okay? So that's what I've got. So I don't have anything on the yellow wire. Here's the yellow wire. You see there's nothing on it. I've got the 3 wires that power coming in. That's the pink, big pink and black. And then the 2 that I just showed you, okay? So when I power these up, right now this vehicle would start. I'll show you why it's not starting. This is how my mind works. I said, okay, I need to get this thing to power on. I want to look at the engine control module. I want to look at data in the engine control module. I want to see what it sees for the ignition switch. But I can't do that in real time because every time I go to hook this thing up to make it where it shouldn't run, should just be in the run position but not in the start position, it's going to start up. So I took the starter relay out. So the starter relay just goes right here, and I just took it out and just have it sitting here, okay? We're going to come back to that. So this data, I'm going to be honest with you right now, is absolutely worthless, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes why. So right now, if I put that starter relay, if I just put it back in, this engine's going to start and run just like it did when you turn the switch to on, okay? So, and this data on here really doesn't help because even when I fix it, it still stays the same. So let me show you. I came down and I went, okay, right now with these 3 wires connected, here's the yellow wire, okay? That's the starter relay wire. If I go to it, look at I got battery voltage on that wire, okay? And then I went in and said, okay, let me disconnect one. So I disconnected this. Still got power, okay? So, because if I disconnect this one, which is the main power one, okay, all the power goes off on the dash. And I just have our little ghost voltage that we had earlier, or circuit test voltage, which I don't think it's that anymore. But I got no voltage there really, no amperage to do anything. So now I'm going to hook that back up. Okay. Okay, so now we powered everything back up again. Now let's take this one out, which then turns things off. I go in there, and again I have nothing. Now if I plug this one back in, there's our power back. So then I said, okay, well something on this blue wire is feeding power to the yellow wire. The only thing that makes sense, okay? So I went under, and you can see that this got a little more complicated under here. And I always say, vehicles break in a very logical manner until a human being touches it. Well, a human being installed all this stuff. So we've got all kind of stuff, and I've got a lot of it untaped. This was all taped into a big, huge bundle. But what I did was I followed this yellow wire. Okay, this is our starter relay wire. I came down and went, uh-oh, well, look at here. Somebody spliced in a brown wire. All right, well, then we follow the brown wire. Okay, well, look at here. Somebody spliced in a little blue wire, right? I followed that down. That little blue wire goes down to this box. So I said, okay, well, let me unhook this thing, and let's see if that fixes it. It doesn't. Okay, it does the same exact thing. So this wire's not doing it. So I continue to follow this brown wire. Of course, I don't have a schematic for this, guys, because this is some aftermarket stuff that was put in here. And look at the mess we got here. So we come in here, I follow the brown wire, I came through, followed around all of this mess, and where did it go? Goes up into this box. No clue what this is. I'm sure it's some kind of a remote start or a kills the start or whatever. But if I disconnect it, let me show y'all. Let me go ahead and get this. I'm going to try to do this here. So there's you guys can hear the buzzer. You can see the power is on the yellow wire right now. And if I disconnect this, which is not easy to do with one hand. If not impossible to do with one hand, maybe. There we go. We don't have power there anymore. This box, whatever that box is putting power to that yellow wire. So now, let's go ahead and disconnect our, and real quick, let's do this. Let's look over here. So now we don't have power on that starter wire, right? But look at our data, it's exactly the same. I would think that that start switch would be off now, and it's not. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if possibly that yellow, maybe that blue wire, I mean. There it goes. Look at there, guys. There you go, live and in person there. That went off now. So whatever, and that's probably our 10 volt stuff. Let's look on there now. Now we got nothing. There we go. There we go. So no circuit check, none of that for the PCM. Well, I don't know yet because we got the relay out. But that's why this was saying that. Because this thing, two problems. This one's sitting there saying, sending power to that thing enough power and amperage to do the relay, and this thing's sending whatever it's sending in there to give me the false reading on that. Lovely. Now let's go back out. Let's disconnect. So this is going to be like turning the ignition switch off because I'm just taking the main power on that pink black, taking it off now. Let's go out. Tink's still with me. So let's hook our relay back up. So we're just going to take our relay. We're just going to put it back in the box. And guys, this was a couple different things. I pulled the relay fuse out in here. I mean, there was a lot of going down different paths here. But not down a rabbit hole. I followed this thing pretty straight. So just time consuming. All right. Now let's go back in. Let's hook our, now right now, if I did this earlier with that box hooked up, this thing would crank and run. It's not cranking and running now. We're good. Let's go back over here because now we got power off. Good. All right, so we're good, I feel like, here now. All right, so now I feel like if I take the, let's see, because I haven't done this yet. Let's take and unhook all of this. Let's take, I don't want to hook the new one up. There's the old ignition switch. Let's take and put it in. Oops. All right, so it's in. Brought a screwdriver out here to do this. All right, let's watch it. So, see what we got here. There's our dash. And I had to go to crank, so let's watch it again. That's where it would have cranked before, right? I had to actually go to crank. It's fixed. It's fixed. So now let's do this. Curiosity's got the best of me now. Let's go back to that yellow wire. The relay's back in. Do we have anything on that yellow wire? Now we have ground. So that would be normal then. The PCM is not putting any kind of circuit check voltage on it. It's just straight to ground because the PCM's got it grounded right now. So through the coil of the relay. So there we go. We're fixed. I'm going to leave that box. I'm going to leave both boxes disconnected and let the client know whatever those are. I don't know. They're not going to work, obviously. I'm going to get the ignition switch put back in, get this button back up. You know, this is one of those ones where it was a little bit. This was the hardest part about this was finding the information on the ignition switch and getting the wiring where hold on, let's do one other thing. Does this wire in the run position have power? Because remember we had differing information. So that's going to be the run position. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and start it. All right, it's in the run position, the engine's running. What do we have on the yellow wire? Nothing, ground. So where that one said, this switch output run start, not run. So the wiring diagrams were right, the pinout was wrong. If I'm reading that pinout right, guys comment if I'm reading it wrong. But getting that sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole because I'm like, well, which information is right? But we got it, and you know, guys, you know, stuff like this is difficult. You just got to persevere through it. Use a logical approach. Don't go down, you know, too many different paths. Try to go straight to the answer as quick as you can. I get it. This one definitely was not easy, but I hope it helped, guys. This was definitely, I know this is crazy. I'm all over the place, but I hope it helped. I hope you guys liked this video. It was really, we thought it was going to be something super easy, show you guys something and just give you a couple little pitfalls, and man, did it, you know, hey, this is what it turns into sometimes in the shop. So we appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button, please. Hit that notification bell. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate you. We'll see you in the next one.